And that, we think, will solve a lot of the problems. The very expensive ones almost guaranteed to solve, and the less expensive ones may not give us the guarantee, but we think it'd go an awful long way and probably spends a lot less money per house, gets them where they need to be, and still saves you enough money to fix some of the other really critical things that benefit all these people here.
The lining of that was estimated at $120,000.
So to do those couple of blocks of lining was about $120,000. During the course of this discussion, we also were talking to the plant guys and Bob and a few other people, and we found that this line here along the fairgrounds is not in very good shape, and as we talked earlier, has a really bad infiltration problem, which is evident by the fact that when we plugged up a sewer out there, the fairgrounds had a lot of water standing in them, and we pulled the plug on the sewer, and all of a sudden they drained. So we know there's water getting in, and that's water you guys are paying a lot of money to treat. You're pumping it, you're treating it, you're chlorinating it, you're dechlorinating it, so it makes some sense to try to address that. And that project was
$175,000.
$175,000 to line that and try to get that pipe dried up. And I understand you guys have been working with the fairgrounds and had to try to get some of their portion of this fixed up and squared around as well. There are the three that the subcommittee felt was probably the smartest and the most bang for the buck to get something fixed. And that would be, as we talked, the main outfall down through the ravine. That's all new pipe, all the way down onto 5th Street. That would be lining with CIP down 11th Street, and roughly Gishwiller from 12th to 11th and 11th Street to Bailey, and then fixing down there at the fairgrounds. And part of our question, or part of what we were questioning about, was can we kind of point you in the direction of what would be the next in line, and we'll certainly do that, and we're trying to do that right now.
With the information, as soon as we get the rest of the sewer tapes that you've already done, because we picked the areas, with help from the city staff, we picked the areas that we thought were probably the worst to look at first.
We spent the day walking around with Bob and Alvin, pulling manhole covers all over town, and those guys know better where anything is than anybody else, and they were able to point and say, here's a bad spot. So we've got what they know, plus what we can get off of those tapes. So should be able to help you get it pointed in the right direction.
One of the other items that we noted as we walk around and looking at the facility, getting more familiar with them, is the main lift station.
Part of what we were asked to do at one point was to go down and at least do a cursory evaluation of the main lift. For those of you who don't remember, the main lift station is down here just to the south end of the park. It's pretty invisible because all it is a piece of metal sticking out of the ground about so high. But actually underneath there's a whole room with pumps in it. And I got some photos you can see in a bit. That station was put in when the plant was built about 30 years ago. And there's what it looks like in a plan section view. You go down, it's kind of a creepy machine to go down. You climb over the edge and you belt yourself up so you don't fall, and you walk down a ladder, step down into the pump station. And it's about, if I remember right, about 35 feet from here to there, so it's pretty deep. When you get down there, there's a room. You see by the plan view, there's a room, and it's got a little taller ceiling than this, and in the one corner sits 2 pumps. And you can flip that to the next one. Part of what we saw in this thing, and you can see here's the ladder, and here's the piping that comes into the pumps, or into the pumps and out of the pumps. There's the motor for the pump, there's the pump itself, and there's a valve. You can see it's kind of got an arched roof, kind of comes like this, and the top of this roof, we're standing at about 35 feet underground right here. And The concern was not only the pumps, but if you can snap the next one, this kind of deterioration. And this is fairly characteristic. When they build these things, they take this big half curve and they weld it to a steel plate. This thing's all made out of steel. And they make a weld right here at the bottom of the floor. And they weld a cover on there. And that's fairly significantly deteriorated. Kind of hard to see here, but your pictures I think maybe a little better. And I've got a couple more of those. You can see there's a lot of rust along that seam. And the concern is really twofold. Is that seam in good enough shape to stay in service? Well, we talked to a couple folks that have an ultrasonic gauge, and we've arranged to get them out here to do an ultrasonic test. And we're going to find out just how thick that steel still is. And at that point, we'd be able to help you determine, what you would have to do to this thing.
There is sufficient room inside here to upgrade and add pumps, if in fact it's okay structurally. That's kind of our main question at the moment. A lot of times these stations, everything was so packed in, so tight that there's generally no chance of ever expanding it. This particular station is big enough, and what they put in the ground was big enough to actually expand and even add bigger pumps and increase the capacity. So there is a possibility, and the reason we're really looking at this is just the equipment alone would be $500 million for replacement of a similar station.
I called the manufacturer of these things, and it is a manufacturer. They come on a truck, and they put them in the ground. And I called the manufacturer, who went out of business shortly after the station was built. There are several others in the business, and to get one to replace this unit with the pumps in it and the steel shell not installed, sitting on the truck, was about $500,000, about $480,000, and that's not in the ground. So there's more to do after it goes there. So it really is something you probably want to try to fix, if at all possible. And I've got a couple ideas in the back of my head to maybe make that possible.
This is something that's not going to run the next 20 years without some major improvements or repairs either to it or replacement. So it is something that we want to follow, figure out what needs to be done here, what the upgrade needs to be done, how much more capacity we want to have, and then bring it back to you folks for a decision on whether you do it at this time, which may be cost effective doing it at this time with the rest of the project, or putting money away for the future, because at some point you will have to do some major repairs to it. And then discussion open for question, I guess. Now that we got to this point, I meant to say you guys could ask questions anywhere along the way if you had questions. So what we're trying to do is give you the background and get everybody up to speed on a lot of the things that we've talked about, and making sure that we're all comfortable, all heading in the same direction on this project for the improvements. That's our goal.
And the reason we're discussing this and considering it is because we have to have a motion to approve this to move forward, to follow their timeline. That's very critical at this point. We don't have a lot of time to waste.
You gave us the, A, B, A through D alternatives for the wastewater treatment plant, and you listed D as your number one choice. In terms of longevity and maintenance, is that as good or better than the, A through C?
We're looking at really roughly a 20-year design life. And 20 years from now, the existing concrete in the plant will be quite a bit older. If you build a whole new plant, then you'd only have 20-year-old stuff. But in rehabilitating it and replacing the equipment, we believe we're going to get the 20 years plus out of it. The options or the advantages in some of the other options were maybe a little more flexibility for the future if the regulations changed, if there was a phosphorus removal requirement put on you or more stringent requirements. They may be a little more flexible in the treatment process to add additional treatment to them. But I don't believe we aren't painting you into a corner.